Welcome to the Masters of Real Estate class on property management. Today, we're doing an interview with Robin and Willis, some of my good friends that actually have a management company down in Long Beach and do a lot of different properties in Southern California, have significant experience. We've had them speak multiple times at our For Investors by Investors nonprofit group that teaches financial education and real estate education. And today, I brought them in to give you guys their perspective about property management versus mine. I have a different perspective from an investor perspective. They're actually in the trenches, being the bad guys all day long for the investors and helping them understand what repairs issues come up. And of course, doing the collections and all the operations side, being the bad guys to the tenants. So it's funny. I think the managers have a hard job because I feel like everybody gives you guys crap for the problems that exist in real estate, and it's your fault. So, and it's pretty funny, but you realize that that is not the case after years of experience versus acting emotionally out of a situation, right? So I'd love to get an understanding of, just for everybody in the group, your experience with regard to property management and real estate and when you guys got started, and maybe even your experience before that. What, made you say, hey, we're going to jump into probably the hardest business in real estate at the end of the day?
Well, so I'm a broker, and I have been for many years, and I've pretty much done everything in real estate. I've done all of it, and I have a really heavy banking background. I did a lot of commercial real estate lending. So doing it's interesting doing having experience in all the different property types and all of the you kind of move to your niche, and I think that's an important thing. And I know, Matt, like, you've done everything, you know what I mean? So I'm sure, I think it's great that this course, you're showing everyone all of the different sort of niches, and that they can sort of focus on and pick kind of what works for them.
Right.
We focus on multifamily and single family homes and condos. So we do residential property management. We're in the Long
Okay.
Beach area. So we like Long Beach, South Bay, North Orange County. We'll go out maybe like 25 minutes away from the office. So
Okay.
if you go into LA, we do go into Orange County. It just depends. So our experience, this company has been around since 2004. We rebranded in 2011 and really just focused on the apartments and single family. As I said, I'm also a broker, so I do a lot of brokerage deals.
Cool.
Again, staying in that residential apartment, those kind of things, and yeah. So property management, it's when you are an investor, it is a really important piece of the pie. It's really important to get that um, right. And with all the questions that you send us over, and we'll be
Yeah,
able
I
to
think
talk about that.
I think
But
you guys are the ones implementing the value add strategies and things
right,
like that. And that's what I like about the California market specifically is those value add strategies give you a very big bang for your buck on the
yeah,
rental
they sure do.
increases and renovations compared to other markets, just because the cap rates are so low as well. So and
Right,
I think people don't understand that it's the people on the ground like you guys that are increasing the true value of these buildings,
Yeah.
right? And actually doing the work to get that done versus, the investors that raise the money, the operators or whatever, they think that they get all the clout and all the credit, I'll call it,
mhm,
for the actual operations work versus you guys are actually doing it, so and that's
right,
great that you see that on the brokerage side too, where you can bring that value to the table and be able to help people to be able to actually implement these things and really show them where the value truly is based on your knowledge of the market. So
right.
that's awesome. And Will, what about yourself? I'd love to hear a little bit about you, man.
Yeah. First off, just want to say thanks for having us on. It's a pleasure to be
Yeah.
here. My name's Willis Allen. Grew up here in Long Beach, California. My family kind of worked in real estate and whatnot. So my dad actually had me making cold calls for him when I was about 8 years old, just in there and talking to people about real estate and whatnot. So I've kind of been in the business for pretty much what feels like my whole life. I've been on cold calling brokerage side. I've also been on the maintenance side. There were a few times in college where, I need a little bit of extra money. So I go down and, help out with some of the maintenance on a house and whatnot. But I'm really grateful for, that work, that kind of backbreaking work, because that really taught me, how long it should take something to be done, what the
Right.
cost of it should be, right? All that kind of stuff really helped me hone my knowledge a little bit more on, the people that we deal with day to day on the management side. And then currently, my role here at Concept 360 is business development manager. So I speak with a lot of new owners, people looking to switch their property management company, people just looking for something new, maybe accidental owners who are looking for property management. I've got my ear to the ground with, a lot of those people and a lot of kind of what they're going through there.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I was laughing because you said you're doing it and on the ground doing that, and my friends make fun of me because I have computer hands. So I'm like, I'll just be the keyboard warrior over here. Hey, I need that done. Yeah, that's I've been to Tennessee when it's 100+ degrees out, when as far as humidity goes and everything, and they're in the attics and under the houses, and you're going, man, you got mad respect for how hard that work
Oh
really
yeah.
is
Oh,
when
yeah.
you do that. I'd love to bring them beer, but I don't because of the liability. So I'm like, you got my brother, and go take the beer home. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but at the end of the day, like, yeah, that knowledge base that you're talking about of being able to actually do it and say, no, this takes this long. If not, you're
Mhm.
lazy.
Yeah.
Like that's BS that you didn't get
Absolutely.
this part done in
Yeah.
a day. So when you're going out and seeing the actual contractors doing the work and monitoring their progress about how far they really should be on that renovation or not, you're able to tell, hey, like you
Oh
totally
yeah.
took a couple days off for sure, and
Yeah.
we're not
Right.
working on this full time. And that's notorious for contractors being able to go back and forth between jobs because they need to know where their next meal is going to come from, and they may not have another job. So they overpromise and underdeliver so many times with regard to timeline, and of course cost and missing things and all that, which you can mitigate to a degree through proper inspections and things like that, right? So,
Mhm.
so right now, how many management units do you guys manage in Southern California, and how far away will you guys go? You said LA area, you'll go down in like Orange County and Irvine type area, or that's
Yeah.
25 minutes in LA is like, it's like 5 miles.
Right,
with
right.
Yeah.
traffic.
We have something in Irvine, actually.
Okay.
We have something in Santa Ana, Westminster, all across the South Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, basically, we've got just under 400 doors under management. So, obviously, multifamily property with 4 units, that's going to be 4 doors. Single family is 1 door there. So we're just under 400 units. Really focusing on kind of LA and the South Bay surrounding areas. So our main target market is here in Long Beach, where our office is located. But we have a lot of business we do in, Lakewood, Cerritos, Bellflower, those kind of surrounding areas.
Okay.
But like Robin touched on, we'll go usually right around 30 minutes kind of outside
Yeah.
of Long Beach. So I would say as
Okay.
far south as, kind of Costa Mesa area, Irvine area,
Yeah.
all the way up to, kind of just maybe south of the Santa Monica area in Los Angeles there.
Right. I
Awesome.
wanted to
And
jump back to the last question real quick, Matt. I think it's important,
please.
on the contractor thing. So we have a lot of vendors that we use, and we have a lot of guys that have worked with us for many, many years. And they know that if they treat us right, they treat our clients right, they're getting more work from us. So we've got these relationships that we've established over years, and there's
Mhm.
trust there, and we know the kind of craftsmanship they do and all of that kind of
Right.
stuff. So those are things that we're able to bring as property managers to the table for our clients that, if you own 3 houses, you just don't have those same kind of relationships. I mean, we've
Right.
got guys that are, constantly working, doing stuff for us because we
Right.
have so many properties that we manage. So it's that economies of scale, and they know they're going to get work from us if they treat our clients right. So
I think
that's
that's
another beneficial part of it.
absolutely key. We've had that same issue where property managers, once they have scale enough to be able to do those kind of promises for those guys and keep them working consistently, you're either going to bring them in-house, which comes with a whole nother level of problems,
Right.
right? And overhead.
Right.
Or you're going to, do what you guys are doing and utilizing specific guys that you use as vendors that you've, gone through the ringer with everybody else in that, you know, that has been a pain in the butt and worked through the bad contractors to get to the ones that finally are responsible and have a good system and, you know, do what they should be doing. And we've seen smaller property managers that don't have that scale in different markets really fall on their face when it comes
Oh,
to
yeah.
maintenance and
Totally.
construction and things like that, where they just don't have the resources and they're going to all these outside vendors that are charging the clients way too much money. They're like, yeah, we'll schedule this out way later. You know, there's all kinds of problems that come from that versus, hey, I know you, I got you, I'm going to get this done soon and ahead of my other people that I don't need as much because of the additional work they give. That is a major value add from you know, a management company. And I think once you get to, you know, the 400 unit level or maybe above a couple hundred units, you start to be able to really do that and work well, you know, in that space. So I agree, that's 100% key. We found that by going to all these management companies and getting screwed, you know, so the hard way, you know. So yeah, so go to someone who has a little bit of scale and you know, obviously every company in general can have problems, right? Can have you know, be good at good things and bad at other things, and trying to look at the different departments of a business as a whole and saying, okay, how do we be proficient in that area or in this area or this area and this area over here? And obviously not only that, but run the business effectively and everything else. Just like any business, it's not easy to run a business, period. There's problems that consistently come up. And I kind of wanted to run through some of these specific systems within a management company to get your guys' take on, hey, what's efficient? What do you guys do in each one of these categories to make it efficient, or, you know, to be able to, you know, get a tenant in there as fast as possible, or get a rent ready done immediately, or, you know, all the little things that really add up when you're managing a property, or you know, a large amount of properties for an investor, because those are the things that really add to profitability, right? So so the first thing I'd love to just talk about just briefly, in the first, I think we're talking about leasing, collections, service calls and repairs, you know, accounting, communication, and, you know, of course, problem resolution that comes up all the time, you know, for stupid things. And I bring up the story, my very first eviction I had, I had to evict someone that we bought a property with a tenant in there, which of course, you know, the problems with that, and they're never qualified up front. You never have all the documentation. You can't evict them half the time because you don't have the documentation. And I didn't know any better. It was one of my first properties that I bought. And me and my buddy walk by the house to knock on the door to see about payment ourselves, because we just started our own management company. And I knock on the door, and it's a 400-pound plus lady that's bedridden in the living room with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old taking care of her, bringing her water. And I was like, oh my God, what do you do? You know? And it's the hardest thing emotionally to deal with that. And, you know, you give her every chance. And then, of course, I go by again and the sliding glass door is shattered all over the ground. And she's like, I don't know. I just looked up and it was like that. And I'm like, now you're full of shit. You know, like, I don't believe you. And she kept story after story, of course. And it took, make a long story short, it took 15 firemen and a Zuzu trooper and a cargo net to get her out through the front window of the house and take her to the hospital while the kids went to the grandparents' house. And like, after that, you're like, did I just get knocked out in a boxing fight right now? That was just emotionally the most draining thing ever. And I don't know how you guys deal with that. You know, there's poverty, there's harshness of situations where you have to have that business decision. Obviously, you want to help people as best you can, but you can't let someone just lose their entire investment because of a bad situation, right? And so, you know, I want to, as we go through the collections and things like that, we'll kind of touch on some of those things and how you handle those. But let's start out with just the leasing side of things, and from the start, and how to avoid those negative situations from happening in the first place, or minimize them. What do you guys do on a leasing side of things with regard to, you know, a new unit becomes vacant or you take over a new unit? What's typically the operational structure that you go through when you're starting off the leasing process?
Yeah, I can walk you through that. So first off, I think you're hitting on all the right things here, and I really appreciate the fact that you're speaking. A lot of people, especially unexperienced investors, right? They look at property management. They're like, what am I really getting from this, right?
Right.
You're gonna collect the rent from me. What else are you gonna do, right? And once people, kind of go through and they, like you, they may have had a bad experience. They realize there's actually a lot of things that happen in the property management process, separate than just the leasing cycle or just the rent collection cycle, right? So really what we do is we blend that all together efficiently, right? So in terms of leasing, basically kind of touching on your question, leasing, when a new property comes on the market, we sign somebody on. First thing we do, we come in, we do an inspection with them, right? Because the first thing that we want to do is let them know where they can best spend their money in order to get the highest return on investment for themselves, right? So we help them go through that process. We can facilitate vendors to come in, do the renovation, whatever may need to be done. We help them out through that. Really, the nice thing about us is we're set up to be as hands-on or hands-off as possible for our owners, right? So we do that. We come in. Once it's ready, we take professional photos. We send it out on our listing service. It goes out to over 98 different websites. So think things like, Zillow, apartments.com, rent.com. You're going to be getting a lot of eyes on it, is the point, right? And the nice thing is we can track how many click-throughs we're getting. So we know, which listings are popular, which may be priced a little bit too high. We may need to come down a little bit on pricing. So we have that. And then the next part of the process that we actually do is the leasing process itself, right? So first thing I would say that is important for leasing is what we have set up at Concept 360 is a 24/7 leasing line, right? So that means basically anybody that sees, the advertisement online can call the number. They'll get in touch with an actual live representative, and they'll set up a time to come meet us at the property and do the showing, right? So that's very important, because if you don't have somebody, catching all those people who are coming in, you may be missing a lot.
A bunch of missed calls and things like that becomes a major issue, right?
Exactly.
And we also use and I don't know if I should talk about software here, but we use a software called Tenant Turner. That helps us with that. It's a scheduling software that we use to schedule, and people can schedule. They'll see when our leasing agents are available, when the showings are set for that week, and then they schedule to come to one of those showings.
And piggybacking off what Robin's saying here, one of the, there's a lot of different kind of business plans for property management companies, right? So a lot of companies, what they'll do is they'll come in, they put a lockbox on your front door, and they schedule showings. It's called a self-showing, right? The people can come in, show themselves through the property, and then they can apply online, right?
Like Rently, or they use Rently or something like that, right?
Now, the only problem with that, right, is that you never get a chance to actually meet the tenant face to face, right? And the last thing that we want to do as property managers is be signing up our clients for a year-long mistake by picking the wrong tenant, right? Leasing and tenant selection is actually one of the biggest processes that we go through, right? One of the most important. And honestly, we could have a whole call. I could talk to you about this for an hour, and I don't know if that really stresses the importance of it, but really what we're looking for at the end of the day is somebody who's going to pay their rent on time. They're going to treat our owner's property as if it were their own, and they're going to stay there for a while, right? Because largest cost associated with owning a rental property is getting it ready for that next person, right? So really, that's kind of how our leasing process looks like. We do everything in person. We do credit checks, criminal history, credit checks, background checks, Megan's Law, employment verification, all that kind of stuff, all in an effort to really make sure that we're putting the right tenant in. And we found that with a solid screening process on the front end, we've really been able to eliminate, 98% of back end issues just by making sure we're picking the right tenant in the first place.
So important.
I think what you're talking about meeting the tenant is very, very important. I know a management company in the Midwest that implemented I hated using Section 8 tenants because I felt like they destroyed your house. They're judgment proof. you can't get, that kind of issue that comes with it where you can't really go after them for these problems that exist in a property. Maybe you could get them kicked out of the Section 8 program, but a lot of times that's more trouble than it's worth, for damage that they cause. And so what he did is he went through and he said, okay, every Section 8 tenant, and he started actually implementing this across the board for all of his properties after the success of this, but he would meet them at their current residence to sign the new lease so he could see how they lived. And if they said no or canceled for any reason, he typically would deny the application at that point and move on to the next tenant. And, if he couldn't do that at their house, then he said he would do it every once in a while, next to their car to see how messy their ar was and things like that. And I thought that was really an interesting idea. Like, actually, you're seeing, if you go to a property as a property manager, what is landlord negligence type maintenance items versus tenant caused problems, right?
Absolutely.
So, when you're able to see that firsthand and they won't let you into their property to go and sign a lease, there's a problem there. And he said he cut down 75% of his major rent ready costs by doing this exact practice, which I was like, that's genius, even though it's a pain in the ass. But if you think about the cost of doing that to sign each lease versus the benefit on the back end of not having a major rent ready is one of the biggest costs there is for a landlord, So, so it's interesting you're saying this on the leasing side, because I agree with you, getting that feel for the person, who they are, how their demeanor is. If you can tell a lot of times by reading them if they're going to be honest or not.
Or even overcrowding is a huge problem in Southern California, right? So by being there at the actual leasing appointment, we can also make sure that 8 people don't step out of the car for a 2-bedroom and they're all, oh, I want to live there, right? Because that's going to wreak havoc on the pipes. That's going to cause huge maintenance issues. So we can also prevent overcrowding, things like that. Just making sure that we have, the right tenant profile that we're looking for by being there.
And when you're qualifying them from an income standpoint, obviously we've seen massive inflation occur and people squeezed, financially from general expenses that aren't included in normal like rental qualifications and, gasoline expense and food are not on your credit report normally, but you can see credit card debt going up and that kind of thing to pay for that. What are you guys doing right now as far as qualifications to be able to have somebody be able to move into one of your properties as far as income wise? What do they have to make?
Great question.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch that? I can touch on that.
You go ahead.
So they have to make 2.5 times what the rent is, but that's net, right? So 2.5 times net, whatever the rent is usually kind of what we're looking for in terms of the tenant profile.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Yeah, 2.5 times net. I hear gross all the time, and I'm like, what about after taxes, 401k contributions, everything else? It's like, what's their actual take home, right? So, and when you guys do like move-ins and move-outs and things like that, what are the things you do to protect the owners from that side of things?
So we do a move-in inspection.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have actually another software that we're using that the tenant can do the inspection themselves. So let's say, there was like, a little hole in the screen or something that wasn't seen at the rent ready, right? And so they can take a picture of it, document it. So it protects them and it protects their security deposit so that they know, okay, I'm documenting all of this stuff. And if it's something obviously that needs to be fixed, it gets fixed. But the most important thing is that they're documenting what the property looked like. So it protects the owner and it protects the tenant.
Okay, gotcha. And how do you handle items like, on the service call side of things that are tenant related or landlord related, type expenses? It's a hard thing, I think, sometimes to deal with, right? How do you guys handle that type of service call?
Well, I think people in our office are really, have been doing it so long that really know when something comes in, if it's a tenant caused expense,
the clogged toilet or something, then
So we also do that by going in on our inspections. For example, if we get in there and it looked great and we know it looked great because you're the one who filled out the move-in, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And we know it looked spotless then, and then we come in and then, hey, there's a huge hole in the wall or something like that.
Sure.
We're going to know that's them, right? And what we're going to do, is we're going to let them know, hey, we know this wasn't here when you moved in. We realize things happen. We understand, but you have 10 days to fix this. Otherwise, we're going to send a handyman over here. They're going to fix it, and then we're going to
We
bill it to
charge
you.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, those big holes can't be filled by the toothpaste,
No,
method.
no.
Some of them,
I used
yeah.
to, I used to do that. I used to do that in college. We're moving out. I'm like, oh, there's a whole little hole, but
Oh, that's hysterical.
it worked every time. No one sees it. But
Yeah.
unless it's a giant hole, then you're
Right.
not getting away with it, So I
So
think I
funny.
tried to fill a couple of those giant holes. It didn't work, So
We
but
need spackle.
yeah, there you go. Just smackle.
We
It
need
probably worked
drywall.
fine. Yeah. So I'm like, but then it doesn't blend with the paint right, So but anyways, so on the service calls side of things,
Yeah.
obviously it's super important from a tenant retention standpoint, as
Yes.
well as from an investor standpoint of making sure, hey, costs are reduced and they're not getting destroyed by costs over here as best you can. And
Right.
obviously the repair replacement argument can go back and forth depending on future potential costs. How do you
Sure.
guys, what happens with your guys' system when a tenant calls or communicates with regard to a service call that occurs on the property? Or and do you guys do like annual inspections or anything like that
Yeah.
to be able to check on things, or
We do
can you
inspections
explain
every
how that
6
process
months.
works?
Yeah, so
Say
I
it
can,
again.
we can kind of walk you through that here.
Yeah.
So, first thing, and probably the most important thing I would say, like you said, service calls are just part of the business, right?
Right.
So there's going to be service calls at all times, right? So the most important thing that we can do is make sure the tenant's staying there, the tenant's happy, the owner's happy, right? And a good property manager really, the good ones act as a buffer between, the tenants and the owners, right? And that's
Right.
what we're looking to do. So in order to do so, the first thing that we set up is a 24/7 maintenance hotline, right? So if there's ever any issue on the property, the tenants can get in touch with us 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and we'll triage the problem. We'll send somebody out to fix it as soon as possible, right?
They can either,
Now-
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah,
Willis.
go ahead.
They can either call it in or go into their portal on
The
the,
portal,
yeah.
the
so
software.
they
Okay.
can put it on online. They
Is
can-
that the same tenant Turner software that you're talking about, or is that
No.
what
Our-
software do you guys
Our
use?
property management software that we use is called Appfolio.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Sorry, go ahead.
Cool.
Yeah, but no, they can go ahead and submit, a query with us, and then we'll triage it and get somebody out to fix it. For example, the way service calls are, right? Most of them, you get them at 11 p.m., and it's either, hey, my drain's clogged, or, there's something underneath the refrigerator's clogged. And, or, hey, my bathroom's clogged, right? So, if they've got 2 bathrooms, we'll let them know, hey, do you mind
We'll
just
send
using
someone out.
the other bathroom for the rest of the night? And we'll send somebody out in the morning to avoid paying
Yeah.
overtime charges, right?
Mhm.
So we triage it, we triage the problem. But I would say the most important thing is to really just make sure that these tenants feel heard, right?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times, whether the problem's minor, major, tenants really just want to know that, number one, they're being heard, and number two, there's somebody behind there actually doing something about it, right? Because
Right,
nobody wants
right.
to live in a place where faucets
For
broken,
sure.
you've been calling for 6 months, nobody
Right,
shows up,
right.
right? And I think
No,
that's
absolutely not.
what you can see sometimes with some of these, mega large companies and stuff like that is, you can see a little bit of drop off, I think, in terms of maintenance, just because, the bandwidth thing, right? If you're
Right.
if they've got 15,000 doors that they're dealing with, right, and huge multifamily properties, and you're calling because you live in a single family rental and you've got a pipe backed up, a lot of times we see they may not be the quickest to service in that kind of way, right? So I think it's really, again, just to stress the importance of finding somebody that you can have a working relationship with and that has the bandwidth to dedicate the time to the type of property that you have is of utmost importance.
That makes sense. And I think, yeah, the service calls piece, just because the faster you pay attention to it, the happier that tenant is. Right.
Right.
If they have to go a week without something, no matter what it is, they're gonna be like, I can't believe this has been a week, you know, in
Yeah.
their mind, right? And sometimes it's understandable if there's like a major issue, of course, you know, like you have to remediate, it may take more time and things like that.
Yeah.
Of course, we've had the issues where the plumbing line to the street breaks, even though we scoped the line and it seemed fine, and we have to move the tenant out for, you know, a little bit to get that handled, you know, for to have them go to a hotel for a minute so they're not just bothered like crazy, especially on a brand new move in or something, you know. So and those types of things, it's basically customer service to make sure, like you said, that they're heard. And especially in a tenant situation, they probably have dealt with people that have just don't repair things or have
Oh,
these
yeah,
problems, and so they're
sure.
really worried about that, you know, on a
You'd
new
be
management.
surprised some of the stories I've heard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Like I've heard of them myself too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
You know,
okay, cool. And
not pretty.
and so they use Appfolio, or they'll call, and you'll get that notification real time, and then you'll immediately send it out to one of your vendors basically to go over there and communicate with them, you know, to be able to do that, I would assume. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to payments from property owners and things like that, how do you handle that side when you're like, hey, we're out at the property, we're just going to fix it right now, and you know, you don't necessarily get full approval because they're there at the property. Like, you're not going to go back and be like, hey, that's going to be $500, like, are you cool with this? Let me just wait for that owner to get back to me, which
Yeah.
may not get back to me for 3 days, you know, before I go fix this. How do you handle those types of things? Or do you actually call the owners? Or that's a
Yeah, for
hard
sure.
thing to deal with, you know?
We have a threshold as far as how much we can, you know,
There's
charge
preset spending limit
exactly.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's
and a reserve.
and then we have a reserve. And then when it's something like that happens, usually if something happens, it's like a big deal, and we're meeting a plumber over there. The owner knows,
Yeah.
and they've
Okay.
got they're ready to either pay the plumber directly or make a contribution into their they have an
Their
owner's
account.
portal, just like the tenants have a portal, so they're able to make owner contributions into their account, so that
Okay.
we're able to cover the cost of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, to that collections item on this, I think this is one of the hard things, right? Because there's so many special circumstances or things that can happen. And some management companies just have like, hey, this is a hard line, past this line, we're going to eviction. And some management companies will say, okay, we'll do a payment plan. You've been good for 2 years with no missed payments, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden you had a lost job, but you got a job again, you
Right.
know. And how do you handle that? Or you kind of get feedback from the owners, or do you
Yeah.
guys and kind of let them know what's happening? How do you handle those types of collection issues, and what does that process look like from a collections side of things?
We definitely let the owner know what's going on. A lot of times, you know, it's a case by case basis, because like you said, sometimes it's a real, you know, they did lose a job and then they got a job, and so they,
Right.
you know, they need to split a payment for a month or something like that. And we're able to work with them, because like you said, it's going to cost the owner more if these people
Right.
want to stay and want to pay their rent, and they had a hiccup, then it's going to cost the owner more to get them out, get the place rent ready. And how long is it going to be vacant before we get another, you know, tenant in there? I mean, for us,
Right.
not long. I mean, we fill our vacancies really quickly, and that's because of our advertising, and that's because of that we showed them in person. A lot of these management companies, they'll just throw a lockbox on there, set it, forget it, and that place will stay vacant for 3 months. You know,
Right.
so
Right.
I think, you know, we definitely work with tenants, and you know, it does depend on the owner. Most, you know, most people have a heart and are able to, you know,
Right.
look at the bigger picture. You know, sometimes when they're not, like we call it landlord math. You know, it's like, look at the bigger picture, and this makes more sense.
Right.
It makes more sense to pay, you know, a leasing commission and
Right.
get property lease than it does to miss out on 4 months rent. You know, so
Right.
those
Right.
I'm going all over the place, but yes,
No, that makes a
far
lot
as
of, I mean, it's
as far as working,
teaching the owners like, hey, what's in their best interest, because they may
yeah,
not know.
And
Right.
right,
can I just say something real quick here that I think is very important? Really, what we try and do is a property management company is we try and be advisors, right? Because at the end of the day, we take direction from
Right.
right,
the owners that we work with. But with that being said, I think there's something to be said about, 20 plus years of experience here, and we know what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
So a few times, owners, they may give you some pushback, but we really do have our owners' best interests at heart, right?
Right, right.
At the end of the day. And one more kind of thing on this too is, I see when a lot of people are calling property managers and whatnot, this isn't like a realtor transaction, right? This is not a
Right.
transactional thing, right?
Right.
We're not going to sell your property and then never see you again, right?
Right.
This is much more so a relationship based on trust, right? So to have that trust, you have to have open lines of communication between owners and, our company here. So
Right.
that's just, something I think is of utmost importance, is just being able to have that trust with those people that you're working with. I think that goes a long, long way.
I think that communication piece is absolutely key to explain
Yeah,
the situation,
absolutely. Mhm.
because
Yeah.
so many people think, oh, they're behind, and a manager made a certain decision and didn't inform them or tell them what was actually happening and the reason why they made that decision in the first place,
Yeah.
basically to protect them and saying, look, it made more sense to do this than it's cost you money over here. That's why we made this decision or whatever. Or, do you disagree? Do you want to change, your decision? Of course, because at the end of the day, it's their money that's on the line. At the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
time, you guys have the most experience of being able to save them that money, and that's the
Right.
whole point, right? Is
Exactly.
the efficiency of it in the first place. And I think that communication in a lot of management companies can lack.
Oh,
And the lack of understanding, or when they get too big, they're not going to go inform the owner why they made that decision on stopping on the collections, or made that replacement instead of that repair on an item or something, when it's going to be keep going out every single month for the next 3 years or
Yeah.
something. It might
Yeah.
last 3 years, but you're going to be having to cost way more than that on the maintenance. And so that communication on accounting issues, on the collections, the service calls, the leasing, the major departments, I think is kind of the key behind that positive relationship and that trusted relationship there. Because after a while of you explaining to the owner what's in their best interest and it working out to your favor most of the time,
Yeah.
then
Right. Right.
They start to trust you and
Yeah.
realize that you
Right.
do have their best interest at
Yeah.
heart. Yeah.
Right. And I see a lot of teams, a lot of management companies faltering on the accounting side, where things won't get billed back on repairs. They might have adjustments after the month end close and things like that go into the previous month and mess up the beginning balances. They don't book their collections or repairs correctly inside the books and stuff like that, or charge wrong invoices for other properties in error and things. These are all things that could happen in any accounting department, period. Of course, how do you guys differ on that side, as far as what safeguards do you have in place, or procedures do you have in place on the accounting side to help with, making sure investors are getting these statements timely and everything is as correct as possible? Every once in a while, of course, there's going to be an error, but there's just like human error, period. So, but how do you guys handle the accounting aspect of the management? Running 400 of these is a lot of work,
Right. So we do have an accountant that does our
Okay.
our reconciliations. So the bank reconciliations, making sure that all of the accounts are reconciled every month. And
Okay.
then we have someone in our office who does the monthly statements. And she's very the person in the office that does the monthly statement, she has a sort of a broad view. She knows about what's going on with every property. So they say that to have about one property manager per 150 doors, that's a kind of
Okay.
about, and we have several property managers. So we have, enough coverage for all of our properties, but the person that's in the office that does the reports, she really knows what's going on and books everything that, any, like you
Belongs to
said,
the
if you
properties.
charge back to the tenants, anything like that. Yeah. So we don't really, that's not an issue that comes up for us. I can see how it
Okay.
could, but it's not, it doesn't come up for
I
us.
think a couple of the management companies I'm referring to, they run like 3,000 units plus, or like, or like we've had so many of them in different markets. You see the inefficiencies, like right there available. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so like
Right.
and so like these are the questions that I typically ask management companies when I'm looking to utilize them, is understand their procedures and who's on their team. Like when you say you have an accountant that also doing the reconciliations, and the
Yeah.
person on your team that knows what's going on with all the properties, that's
Right.
really the key to true accounting, is knowing what the hell is really happening and
For
being
sure.
able to book that correctly and know when you're reviewing the statements and all that stuff, which, you know, is tough. When the bigger you get, the more scale you have, the harder that becomes, right?
Well, and I
So
think that, yeah, that's important because a lot of the companies that are bigger, they haven't built the foundation. We're still
Mhm.
continuously growing, but we scale to grow, you know, so
Right.
we have the foundation and everything's scalable. All of our processes are scalable. So yeah, I think
Awesome.
that's an important piece.
And I think, you know, one final question before we sign off here. I wanted to understand from your perspective, there's a lot going on out there with regard to tenant landlord laws.
Yeah,
And, you know, we saw the whole COVID lockdown where you couldn't evict
yeah,
and stuff like that
yeah.
and everything. How do you see that happening right now? Obviously, you're in one of the worst states for this, Southern California,
Right,
or
right.
California in general. And how do you see that happening, you know, moving forward in the future, affecting owners, or what different changes do you see coming down the pike with regard to regulation of being able to kick tenants out, or being able to qualify them in certain ways and things like that?
So it's a lot, right? With especially, I mean, it's a lot anyway, and then put COVID on top of it. And the
Right.
COVID regulations have been continuously changing, you know, getting extended, and there have been we have people in our office that take all of the webinars from our attorneys that are keep us updated on what we can
Okay.
and cannot do. And I think one of the
Gotcha.
things for like sort of your mom and pop that it's hard for people, you know, I have staff that
To
keep
know all
up
these
on it.
laws. Yeah.
It's
Oh
hard. It's
yeah.
hard. And a lot of mom and pops, they don't know about fair housing laws. There's things that they don't really know. And that's where they can get themselves in trouble, especially, yeah, like you said, California, forget about it, you know.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, the eviction moratorium is supposed to end at the end of this year. So with, you know, regards to COVID.
Right.
So let's hope so. I mean, if you're in LA City, I don't know. LA City is like the Wild West. It's like its own thing.
Yeah. Who
Horrible.
knows what's going to
Uh,
happen there, right?
yeah, we
Yeah.
don't manage anything in the city of LA, but with their rent control, I mean, they were a
Yeah.
nightmare before COVID. They're awful. So I would say that I know I wrote down some
They
notes.
change about every 6 weeks, the
Yeah,
COVID laws, right? And
yeah,
so I speak with new owners every day. It comes up maybe, 2 to 3 times a week where somebody's doing
Right.
something that is illegal or they're
right.
not able to do, right?
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
so I would just
They're gonna
stress
they're gonna
that,
screw themselves too so bad, you
and
know?
they don't
So
even know it,
right,
right? They don't
right.
even know
right,
what they don't know or
Yeah,
what they do know, right? So
right.
it's very important to have an advocate in your corner who is staying up with and is constant on the laws and
right,
what's acceptable, because if not, I've seen it with some landlords who have been doing it themselves and whatnot. You can get yourself into some serious trouble,
right,
and then you're going to need us even more to make sure we
right.
can write everything, and that's
And
it's
if
it's way
and if
more
anything,
expensive, takes longer,
mhm,
all that stuff.
if anything, I think this is the number one reason why people should not be managing their own properties,
Yeah,
period. And I see a lot of mom and pops do this exact same thing that you're talking about and get themselves into massive amounts of trouble where the tenants know the laws now.
Yeah, they
They
do.
yeah,
know
That's true.
what's right and what's wrong, what they can do and not do, because it's to their advantage to know that information. And so if you don't, you could end up with a situation where you have a squatter sitting there for 6+ months because
Yep.
you gave bad notifications, and then you get sued on top of that.
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah,
so that's one of the reasons I brought this particular topic up, was because that knowledge base of attorneys and staff and everybody just keeping updated all the time on what's changing, so you know what you can and can't do with
Right.
regard to the law, is key. So if people want to reach out to you guys and get to know you guys for being able to potentially manage properties for them,
Yeah.
or utilize you guys for brokerage services in Southern California,
Yeah.
how do they reach you guys?
So our website is c360pm.com. You can reach Willis at c360pm.com. I'm Robin with an I at c360pm.com. And then our office number is 562-423-0900, and you can get to anybody, you know, from the prompts. I do want to say one more thing to your
Please.
students before, while you're picking a property management company, check out the reviews, ask them for referrals, to be able to talk to references, I mean, from their current clients.
Their
We have
current
so many
clients.
happy clients that are thrilled to give a reference, be a reference for us, and you want to make sure that they have that. The other thing that I want you guys to make sure you don't do is don't use a realtor that has a property management side hustle. It drives me crazy. Do you know how many realtors that I meet that say, "Oh, I do
Not their
property
specialty.
management"? No, you don't. You
Yeah,
think
you
you
don't.
do, you know, and I mean, they barely do real estate. You know what I'm saying?
And
I
then
mean,
your
it's
clients
like,
are calling us asking.
90
yeah,
90% of the
exactly.
realtors, 90% of the realtors have less than a listing a year,
Yeah,
period. And alone, let
yeah,
alone know the real true
yeah,
nature of property management and what to do, like you guys do, for
right,
sure. I
right,
see this problem all the time
absolutely.
too.
So there's so much of that happens, and that's, you know, don't do
Yeah, it's
it.
a big problem out there
Don't
for
do it.
sure.
Your realtor, unless your realtor owns a property management company like me, your realtor cannot do property management for you.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a whole nother business in itself, and most realtors don't
Yeah,
necessarily know how to run a business as is, let
right,
alone,
right.
or even necessarily list properties correctly, have it
No,
marketed correctly,
Yeah,
and
you're
even know
right.
yeah.
that business, let alone the other business. So,
Right.
there can be some amazing realtors. I'm not trying to dog on realtors,
No,
but
there
at
are.
the
I
same
know a
time,
lot of them.
yeah, it's just a
Yeah,
percentage basis, very high percentage of people that don't do a lot of activity, just go get their license because they want to save money on their own house or something, or their friend's house, or and then
right.
they think that they know everything about real estate then, and
So
you're
true.
going,
So true.
oh,
Yeah.
so, but well, thank you guys so much. This was absolutely great
Thank you,
information.
Matt.
I hope, hopefully we, saved everybody a ton of money and
I hope so.
mistakes that, of course, I made in the beginning and killed me. I went through about 5 of them in Memphis. I think one was a drunk, one stole money, the other one like
Yeah,
stole the crappy properties in the hood and, stuff like that, that you
right.
don't know about. But thank you guys. This has been great. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording there for everybody.